So last week, in the last couple of weeks on TikTok, they've been talking about biphobia, and straight women have come out and just said, we're not going to date bi men. And the queer community has basically asked them to unpack it. And it's now hit a new layer or level of ignorant. But I also want to just say, I don't blame everybody for being so hard-headed. Women get it really rough out here, especially specifically Black women. So I just want to point out there's a lot of intersections at play here, and we do need to acknowledge all of them. And right now, the most prominent image of the biphobe is a Black woman. And I just want to make sure that we as a community are not playing into any racist thought here about something about Black people being homophobic or Black women being this, because that's not true. It's not unique to Black people. White people are the most homophobic people you'll ever meet. They hate the LGBTQIAs. As a West Asian person, trust me, West Asian people, very homophobic. Everything I've heard out of every creator that's been homophobic, biphobic, I've heard inside of an Assyrian get-together. So we just want to say that up front. Also, my channel is not an excuse for men to come on and shit on women. You also suck, and I don't even want to hear it. So that's the other part, is I made this initial video, and a bunch of liberal men were like, oh, finally a feminist is blocked. Okay, my page is not a page for men to come on and be like, oh, finally a liberal woman who get blocked. Okay, I am not here. This conversation is not for you. This conversation is for people who are actively interested in truly dismantling patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism. It is only, this space is for activists. This space is for community members. This space is for people who are getting tools to take into their real life. So if you are here to shit on marginalized people, blocked. Okay, blocked. Especially if you're trying to give me a compliment while throwing these women under the bus, blocked. With that said, this is a philosophy channel, and we do philosophy through pop culture. And this TikTok is another layer of, here we go. The biphobic convo is proving conservatives right. Sorry, not sorry. Here we go.
I'm not gonna lie, but this biphobia conversation is giving conservatives a lot of ammo. No tea, no shade. So just to recap, bi men and gay men are coming out and calling straight women homophobic because they're not interested in bi men, right? And we shouldn't have a choice. And even though we're straight, we're not allowed to require our men to also be straight. But nonetheless, when, the LGBTQ movement started, a lot of conservatives felt like they're forcing the gay stuff on us. They're forcing it on our children. They're, forcing it down our throat. They're putting it on the shows, the movies, clothing. They're putting rainbows on everything. Everything is pride. And, they really dragged it saying that was being forced on us, right? And I have to disagree because I'm like, somebody being gay is not, it's none of my business, right? Or somebody being bisexual, somebody being a part of the LGBTQ is not my business. It doesn't affect my life. These people exist, and that's just, it is what it is, right? But now it's like, y'all are low-key forcing it on us, right? Because you're saying, even though you're a straight woman, you should, or bi men should have access to you. You should not have a choice. Right? You should be required to date people within this community. If you're a straight person, straight man, straight woman, you should be open to dating somebody who's transgender because they're a woman, they're a man. Like, that's who they are or whatever. And it's just like, okay, now you're proving their point of forcing it on us. You don't want them to force their religious beliefs on you and take away your rights to love who you want to love, right? You can't help who you love. Love is love. You love who you want, but you want to take away our right to love who we want to love. Like, yikes. This is, y'all is proving their point.
Okay, first, again, women, especially Black women, just have it so shitty in white supremacist America, first and foremost, and globally, okay? And I never want to create content that punches down on marginalized people, especially Black women, okay? I cannot respect this position. It is just coming from, I see a very authentic place, but it is so obviously misinformed. And the hope we have of dismantling these systems is that we also then don't internalize the propaganda that they feed us our whole lives that then creates biphobic and homophobic adults. Like, the reason patriarchy works is it pushes gender narratives and calls it biologically, inherently biological, like it's from your biology. And then they tell you that because you're a man, you must act like this, and because you're a woman, you must act like this. And so it blurs the lines of understanding of sexual orientation versus how people act and show up. So obviously we know, and just to be reductive about it, because I think people don't know this, heterosexual typically means, in the most reductive way, that if you're a straight woman, you'd be interested in a man. Not a straight man, not a whatever man, not a cis man, a man. That's what that means. And then The secondary part of exploration could be a straight woman who is into maybe even a non-binary, a he, they, maybe a lot of other different variations, or you could call yourself bisexual, or these labels represent something that is inherent to us, but even what's inherent to us is unknown until we discover it. That's why you discover you're a lesbian at 40. That's why you can discover so many things about yourself later in life, because we are products of our environment. It's not to say that for those of us who knew we were gay as kids, that there aren't going to be adults who realize it at 40, that there are people who realize they're trans at 40. And I think that's because we are biological creatures on the planet having 8 billion different experiences, right, with these things. So though I understand, and I think this is coming from a good place, it is really, really scary that liberal women are saying things like conservatives have a point, right? And this goes back to, and look at this comment here, it says, I'm normally very liberal, but this conversation has been pissing me off. Well, the dilemma with liberals, and the leftists have been saying this, is that liberals are just conservatives. This is why I always tell you, if you do not keep introspecting and deconstructing, and I know everyone's using that word, and nobody knows what it means, but if you don't keep learning, you basically will become a conservative. It's no good to me that you identify as whatever you are if your actions are contradictory, okay? So again, I'm not saying you can change your sexual orientation. I'm saying I don't even know if we know what our sexual orientation is in a world in which we've been fed propaganda for thousands of years that men are like this and women are like this. How would you even know what you are if you haven't had a chance to internally have that conversation with self? I was lucky. Like, I was lucky as a child that I was able to have an internal dialogue with myself and go, hey, I think we like girls. And I was like, oh shit, I think we like girls. What does that mean? And then I was able to go to the adults in my life and be like, hey, what are people who like girls called? And then I was able to ask questions that the feedback they gave me let me know not to, allowed me to, okay? Now, with that said, I want to make sure that we center this around, and in contrast to liberal men and why they're just as bad, and why I will pick a liberal woman over a liberal man any day, even if that liberal woman is homophobic, biphobic, because generally, okay, I don't want to honestly be friends with any of you, but if I had to be in community with one, okay, I'm not going to be friends with the misogynistic men. I'm just not, okay? But I will say this, I don't actually want to build community, and nobody in my community other than my family is even close to being a liberal. Every single close person that I brought into my life, that is actively in my life, that I'm speaking to and is in my life, we're all deconstructing and moving more leftist. Okay? Remember when Vosh had that fight with J.K. Rowling and Cat Black called him out? J.K. Rowling said, what you and your ilk fail to appreciate is how tediously familiar I find your tactics. I had a violent ex-husband who used to tell me life would be great if only I'd comply. But you're making the same mistake he did. Women like me can't be bullied out of resistance. And Vosh said, women, be quieter and start apologizing challenge. Okay. And Cat Black said, hey, you can't be misogynistic to own a transphobe. And Vosh was like, yes, I can. She's a transphobe, so I can be misogynistic. No, you can't. You can't be misogynistic to own a TERF. Just like you can't be misogynistic to own a fascist. Here's Kyle Kalinske telling Nancy Mace, that's a lot of beans, you nasty ass bitch. I'm sorry? Pourquoi? Okay. Which is why, again, I will always embrace a liberal woman who's, when she's being beaten down, feels a need to go back to some conservative root, something familiar to her, because we all go through the stage of 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, right? Now, and I think this is really important because even Hassan Piker has been interviewed recently about his misogyny problem, right? So we know these men on the left have a misogyny problem, but I will always pick a liberal woman or a leftist woman with a misogyny problem because it's internalized rather than a man. But how about this? How about don't make me pick? Okay, don't make me pick. Okay, now here's the reason I come to this conclusion though, and this is the reason I say what I do from a philosophical standpoint. Guys, the world is a reflection of us as a whole. Marginalized or not, Black or brown or not, cis, gay or not, you are a bigot. You are prejudiced. 8 billion people on this planet, and the world is the way that it is because most people on this planet are literally bigoted. So yes, your favorite Black creators. Yes, your grandmother. Yes, your favorite Assyrian creators. Yes, your favorite liberal debate bros. Yes, everybody. It takes an insane amount of effort to work on this stuff. And most people can't pay rent. they're busy. So we talk about this a lot, introspection. Right. I have a level system I'm working on about how introspective, extrospective you are in relationship to the bubbles and relationship to the universe. And most people are twos because most people are just fucking focused on their bubble, bro. You know what I mean? Like they're so busy, they can't pay rent. There's a fascist takeover. Everything is so stressful. And you want them to go do more work? They don't want to. It's exhausting. Especially Black women who are already punched down by the economy, punched down by every community, punched down by everybody. You want them to go and make the extra fucking effort like they're not already doing fucking enough? Okay. With that said, I think it's important to recognize that this is most of our existence. This is most of our relationship with existence. So for a lot of us, what we do is we form community with people who are like-minded. It's a much smaller niche community. It's why a lot of us have underground communities we belong to, because the typical normie community, like they're going to be bigoted or prejudice, at least prejudice. Yeah. But I think like people are good people. They're stuck. And that's why I believe everyone's like a good person, even if everyone's a bad person. It's both. We're animals on a planet. We're evolved over millions of years or billions of years. But like, you know what I mean? There's just like no reason to think that we wouldn't all be struggling so deeply, which is why I don't believe in free will. Because if free will existed, these women would hear what we're saying and go, oh, of course. But they can't because they've already been cornered, told who they should date, shame for their body, shame for their gender, shame for their skin color. We have Michelle Obama, one of the, regardless of how you feel about her husband, you know, even as a leftist, one of the most educated, beautiful women being memed and made fun of for the last how many years, right? And they sit there and go, the first lady, okay, even Black women in the White House are disrespected. And now you turn around and they feel like they are being ganged up on by the internet, which we are kind of piling on right now. And I understand as a queer community, we also feel like, hey, stop making videos about us. It's really triggering, because I know that every debate reason they are giving, you've heard from your conservative parents. I know. I hear my mother's voice in all these women. I'm like, oh, there she is. That's my mommy. That's my mommy. And it makes me miss my mom, my homophobic mother. You know what I mean? I hear it in every conversation I keep watching. But that's why my radical acceptance practice allows me to go, humans are going to human, huh? They really are going to human. Okay? So check this out, this video from Cat Black, okay? It says the homophobia was a little shocking, not gonna lie. That's a commenter. And Cat Black is kind of shocked that people don't know that society is homophobic. Here, look at this.
So, okay, I'm gonna take this comment as the opportunity to talk about this, because I think this is actually a really big part of my weird confusion in this conversation. When did people get to the point where they believed that people were not homophobic? Like, that's genuinely confusing to me, because people have been homophobic forever. I guess it's because I've lived in conservative communities for most of my life. When were people not homophobic? Like, I get it. We've had a couple of years of pro-gay, rainbows everywhere stuff. But maybe it's because I understand the audacity of that. See, that's the weird thing about it. So there was a part of me that appreciated the like corporate pride of it all, because I understood that it was false, but also that there was still audacity in it, because the reality of the culture that we live in is that it is overwhelmingly homophobic. I'm fascinated by those of you who are younger, who I guess because of your youth were able to only experience what you thought was like a pro-LGBT world, right? Because where I'm from, how old I am, right? Growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, it's like, it's impossible for me not to think people are homophobic by default, almost. Like, even, I mean, now I am mostly within alternative spaces, so this is less of the case. But when I was socializing for the longest time, I basically assumed that most people that were socializing with me were homophobic. I'm a little fascinated by that, because I don't know why people are shocked. Not really, but that's because that's my experience, right? Like, I can't believe that most of you exist in cities like Los Angeles, right? Even in Los Angeles, I still feel like people are mostly homophobic. So it's odd to me that people think that, like, in general, homophobia was like more gone than it was really.
I think for me, what was shocking was watching women who are very feministy not be as deconstructed about patriarchy as I would have hoped. Because again, maybe I'm not shocked, but I'm disappointed. But maybe I'm shocked from a principled standpoint. Because, people had asked me, like, Brittany, what do you think about YV Edit? What do you think about Lisa? What do you think about these women? Don't you love them? What do you think of Manifestel and all these people? But ultimately, like, there comes a point where, yes, they are fighting patriarchy. And again, this is not a space for men to open their fucking mouths about women's struggles under patriarchy. This is not your time to shine, boys. Okay? I understand these girlies hate patriarchy. I also understand that they are stuck in a bubble where they think they have no choice but to consistently survive in it. So their only advice to women is to play into patriarchy, but to win the race. And I'm telling you right now, no. Like, you can do it if you want, but I don't have time for it. I have one life on earth, and I would rather liberate myself and my local community than tell us we have to do this. Now, I understand that because patriarchy is a societal framework, it is very hard to sit there and say the system of oppression is something you could liberate yourself from. Obviously, it's going to impact my job. Obviously, it's going to impact, a lot of the way that I show up in the world. It's going to impact the way I'm received on the internet, 100%. But this is not my life. This is my work. My life happens when I turn off this computer. Who's in my body? Who's in my home? Who's helping me fix the roof? Who's helping me pay bills? Who's helping me show up for the family? Who's at my mother's, bedside when she's dying? This is my work. This is how I labor and bring money in. This is my work that is personal to me, which is talking about systems of oppression. But this is not my life. This is a part of my life. My life is happening with who I build community with, which is not a very many people, right? So again, when you come to this space on the internet, my job is to sit there and go, here's a tool, take it back to your real life. Because this is a part of your life, but it is not your life. Your foundational real life. Okay, I'm not going to go to bed with you at night. I'm not going to be there when you're sick at the hospital. Okay, you're supposed to take what I'm saying on stream and introduce it into your family homes, introduce it into your real life, introduce it into your neighborhoods, and say, how do I uplift my community? How do I liberate my community? Because we're all going to die before patriarchy is dismantled. Yeah, we're all going to die before white supremacy and capitalism is dismantled. You cannot sit in this contradictory, you could do whatever you want. I don't think you should sit in this contradictory belief where you say, we're never going to liberate ourselves out of these systems, but I'm still going to have kids and live my life and tell them to keep making babies. Like, if you really believed you couldn't individually liberate yourself, how dare you bring a child into the universe? What framework are you signing up for? You're telling me women have to suffer by dating misogynistic men because of patriarchy? And what, now they have to have kids with them? What, now they have to try, how about no? How about we don't do those things in a space where we can do those? We're in a space where we're privileged enough not to make those decisions, because YV Edit is more than privileged enough not to make the decision. I am more than privileged enough not to make that decision. So again, it's one thing if you're advocating for girls who are in such a horrible, position that seriously, they have no choice, but that's not this position. Okay. That's a different position. So you also have to know who the audience you're talking to. But yeah, most of the world is homophobic. Most of the world is bigoted. Most of the world is anti-Black. Most of the world is a horrible place. Most of the world is fatphobic. And I still think people are good in the way that dogs are good. No such thing as a bad dog, even a dog that bites you. But the thing is I believe that because I think we're animals on a planet. Who am I to look at nature itself and be like, oh, nature was wrong? Nature happened. That's neither wrong nor right. It just happened. And here we are experiencing that happening, right? Chat says, I got a question. Where does the line between prejudice from being victimized in the past and being bigoted out of sheer ignorance and greed? Where is the line? I think there is a line, right? And the line is dependent on the individual and how they exist in the world. And I do think it's your job. That's what we say about unpacking. That's exactly what people are saying when they ask these women, please unpack your homophobia. They're saying, where is the line between your prejudice? Because listen, a lot of these women, I believe every single one of these women that say they are having experiences with the bi men in their life who just end up gay, who they believe are mistreating women, that are cheating, I believe you. Do you think your life is the center of the universe? Do you think that you are the arbiter of 8 billion people's experience? Or do you think that maybe you're having an experience in your bubble with your people in this circumstance? There was somebody who came on my commentary channel and was trauma dumping about their experience with BDSM. And I said, hey, sounds like you had a really bad experience as a kid growing up. I'm sorry to hear that. this doesn't reflect the larger community, and it feels like maybe you're making it sound like it does. And they like double down. I said, hey, I'm going to block you, you know, if you keep doubling down on already misunderstood community. And they doubled down. And I was like, okay, because listen, your personal experience is real. It reflects something that happened to you. But do you want to take your personal experience and place it on everybody else? Or do you want to make sure that, hey, is this just an experience I had because I met this one fucking asshole? Or do I want to put it on the whole community? And this plays into Chelsea Fagan's recent video about neurodivergency and how shitty, uneducated, cruel, and discriminatory it was. It was reeking of ableism, and it was so gross. I genuinely think this is the video that's going to make me unsubscribe. I think I'm going to do it, girls. I think I'm over it. Okay, because she's a liberal white woman who does this thing where she just, I swear, has a thought and goes, I'm going to make a video about that. And she didn't keep it to TikTok where it started. She brought it to her finance channel with 1 million subscribers. And then people in her audience went like, Chelsea, what? You're so misinformed on this. It's incredible. Just watch this beginning. Just watch this beginning with me. Okay?
Welcome to this video in which
it's titled, Maybe It's Neurodivergence, Maybe You're Just Not a Very Nice Person. Mind you, she does not talk about disability once. Mind you, she talks about her having anxiety and how that might make her neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is a pop psych term. It's not a medical term that typically talks about autistic and ADHD people. Okay? I'm diagnosed autistic, pretty sure I'm ADHD, but that's my credentials, okay?
I'm going to
Oh, and I'm diagnosed with mild anxiety.
talk about something that has been on my mind for a while now, in which I personally believe is only becoming more and more relevant, and that I really want to talk about. In case you didn't see it, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, I'm not expecting you guys to follow everything I post on all platforms, but a few days ago, I made this TikTok that has caused a little bit of conversation, some really interesting stuff happening in the comments, and I don't even need to sum it up. We'll just play it right now in its entirety.
So you can be neurodivergent and also a and I fear that our current moment of mental health discourse has given some of you the impression that those two things are mutually exclusive, like that falling under certain umbrellas of neurodivergence sort of excuses you from the most basic aspects of the social contract, or gives you a right to treat others however you want, with them still being kind of morally obligated to like you or have you in their life. And like, unfortunately, that's not how human relationships work, but also I feel like this narrative only harms the people who are already most socially vulnerable and isolated. And you see this play out on apps like this all the time, right? Like a person will talk about a falling out with a friend or a roommate or whatever the case may be, and clearly even in their own telling of the story, like they are probably just not a very pleasant person to be around. And neurodivergence can contextualize this, but it does not remove the universal social responsibility of using whatever tools we have to be a person that other people want to be in community with. Because much like free speech, we are all entitled to do whatever we want, but other people are not required to want to stick around for that. And if you're coming off of your like 6th toxic roommate situation in the span of 2 years, like you are probably much better off looking inward and asking yourself what you can do differently. This is also true of every human relationship ever, right? Regardless of neurodivergence, like the only thing that you can truly know and control and change is yourself and your own behavior. And boundaries, by the way, are for you and how you behave, not something you can impose on someone else. Anyway, all of this is to say, if other human relationships are important to you, which maybe they're not, in which case literally do whatever the you want, but if they are important to you, hopefully the most powerful thing that we can take from all of this increased mental health discourse is reclaiming the tools to be a person that other people want to be around. And we are all working with a mixed bag of privileges and constraints when it comes to doing that, but unfortunately it's something that we all have to do. Because despite what apps like this might tell you, you cannot woke scold someone into being your friend.
Now, as
You cannot woke scold someone into being your friend is a crazy fucking conservative take. For the record, she has been dog whistling conservative talking points for a really long time now, but I think it's just because she's a liberal, and that's what liberals do because they don't even know it. Liberals are so wrapped up in the binary of liberal Republican that they are liberal conservative that they forgot like there are other options. There are other options past liberal, and she's just so stuck in that bubble. The thing that I want you to pay attention to here is she says, you need to be someone that people want to be around versus making sure you're living within your values, making sure you're existing in a way that is good, and then allowing the chips to fall where they may to build community organically. Instead, I think Chelsea's a little obsessed with like being liked, which is why she... Anyways, but like the point is that her misunderstanding of this topic is so bad that even her audience was like, Chelsea, you need to get a professional be on your channel to talk about this. You just don't know what you're talking about. So look at this.
you can see, my overarching thesis in that video is that while neurodivergence is by no means something that is one's fault or a character defect or something that they should feel sort of guilty for, it is also all of our responsibilities to manage with every tool that we have. And it's interesting because in the comments of the video, now in that video, I do not specify my own sort of special sauce neurologically, but a lot of people are speculating in the comments that I am neurotypical. And
I always thought she was ADHD, and I'm so sorry that I kept saying that. I swear I saw a TikTok where she says she's ADHD, and I was like, oh, that explains so much about Chelsea. But the fact that she's neurotypical is throwing me. Are we sure? Is she sure? Has she talked to her doctors? Why did I think she was always an autistic or ADHD girly?
Quite honestly, I don't even know where the boundaries of that are.
Which is why you should never have made this video. If you didn't know what makes them a neurodivergent, it was incredibly irresponsible to make a 45-minute video on a million subby channel about it. This is the arrogance of white ladies. White people are so fucking entitled. They have one fucking, I'm not talking about her white skin either. I'm talking about whiteness. Whiteness makes you think every idea you have is fucking gold. It makes you have the caucasity of it all, allows her to literally turn on a microphone and say, I have no idea, like I have no clue about this topic, but I'm gonna lecture you about it instead.
Whether I would or I wouldn't be. I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which has at times in my life become debilitating. As I discussed on this channel, been on essentially every sleep medication you can think of over the years because my anxiety often results in pretty severe insomnia. Thankfully, I've been sort of in remission from that for a long time through management. Luckily, that doesn't involve prolonged medication because that was something I really didn't want to have to be doing for the rest of my life. There are a lot of long-term and short-term side effects of just being on sleep medication. And I've even at times in therapy sort of explored whether or not some of my symptoms of anxiety would not fall under the umbrella of OCD instead. Things like rumination, moral scrupulosity, and this kind of weird obsession with fairness, things that have become very disruptive in my life over the years. I've stayed in the diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. However, there have been many times throughout my life where my mental health has really impacted.
Okay, so then we're done with this video. She basically she keeps calling it mental health. She keeps saying your mental health isn't an excuse for bad behavior. Autism and ADHD is not mental health. It's all mental health, but it's not a mental illness. It's a disability. So she's like sitting here and she keeps using the word mental illness. Like, oh, your mental illness. Why do you keep calling it a mental illness? Like, and also why are you stigmatizing mental illness? Okay. So like this video gets worse. It's just like, it's a whole video of absolutely nothing. And I think the reason she made it is because she's venting. But here's the problem. When you come to the internet to vent about something you're frustrated with, but you're not educated on, it just ends up being bigotry. It just ends up being racism. It just ends up being ableist. And this is exactly what ends up happening when you exist on an internet where anyone can turn on their phone and just start ranting. So, okay, look it. I've been on the internet a really long time. I've also made terrible videos. I'm trying to do better myself. But this is something I want you to keep in mind when you watch these bubbles. Okay, so check out this video here. Why is my chat right here? I don't know why. Okay, look at this. This is from Logix. I think he's a liberal debater, but I'm not sure. I just found him, so I'm not sure. But they're talking about the bisexuality, trans people. Let's start with this one, actually. I think this one's the better one to start with. Okay, check this out.
So, No,
not this one. Just kidding. This one. No, this one.
To just respect the fact that their gender doesn't align with
Okay, this is about trans people.
their sex. That's it.
Okay, so if we're going to acknowledge people's feelings to that level, then and biology is secondary, feelings are basically overriding biology at this point, then what's the difference between a 45-year-old man that's in great shape saying, I feel like I did when I was 16, I should be able to be with a 14-year-old?
Because that's harmful to somebody. That's a crime.
Where do we draw the line? If we're going to acknowledge feelings and not acknowledge biology, where do we draw the line? Because some people can say that it's sick for people to think that they're a different gender. So it is also sick for people to think that they're a different age. So where do we draw the line?
You cannot consent under the age of 16. So
He feels that he's
you can't a trans person isn't harming anybody. They're living their lives as who they are. You're saying like, oh, that trans person can't go harm a 14-year-old either. Like that's not it's a false equivalency. You say that you acknowledge that gender and sex are two different things, but you keep conflating them. Trans people don't say that they're the opposite sex. They know that their sex doesn't align with their gender. So we're asking you to just respect the fact that their gender doesn't align with their sex. That's it.
And
Nobody's telling you. Nobody's
in line with the year he was born.
I don't care if a 45-year-old thinks he's 16. He can't. That doesn't give him the right to harm somebody.
Okay, so obviously it's like being back home. I feel transported back into my mother's kitchen. Okay? You know what I mean? Listen, it's not, I've heard this my whole life. This is just like my childhood. Okay? Here's the thing. I don't know anything about this man. I don't know anything about this woman. When we're talking about frameworks of oppression and patriarchy, mind you, that if it really came down to it and it became like, who are you going to protect over the other? Obviously, reflexively, I would only want to protect women. Okay? They are just more, they are in harm's way to a higher degree. In a position of privilege in which we need all people to deconstruct homophobia, and in a society where women are a little safer, then we can call out women and kind of like, what are you doing? That doesn't mean we're taking sides with men as a system or even men as individuals. We're saying where you are on this journey of deconstruction or introspection is specific to your lived experience. You can be, like I said, Vosh and Kyle Kalinske, who are pro-LGBTQIA, but then use misogyny in their rhetoric, okay? You can be a woman who says, I want to protect kids, fuck patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, and hold anti-LGBT thoughts. You can be all types of, that's why we call it intersectionality, even though that typically was about how you're perceived sort of in the workforce, give or take. But it really, like Kimberly Crenshaw's work, plays into what we need to take into consideration when coming to a judgment. And the judgment is more of a discernment rather than a condemnation, because we don't need to condemn this woman. We need to recognize where she is. That doesn't mean that this woman's rights aren't constantly going to be targeted by this administration. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, this man on top, his reproductive rights aren't being threatened. His economic status isn't being threatened as much, even though as a black man, he will be targeted in some aspects under white supremacy. But his womb isn't under debate, okay? Hers is. And so when we have these conversations, we have to remember when it comes to policy and government, we still need to see her for where she is in that hierarchy. And she is at one of the lowest, if not the bottom. Okay? So we have to remember this. And it sucks to see people who are there not match up with the other people who are also there, like trans and gay people. And I think what we have to do is have a strong compassion for the fact that marginalized people can't see each other sometimes. Okay, so here's another video from them.
Blair White is, right?
No.
If you
Okay, this is a white man?
So you see that person in the first scene.
Okay, first of all, let's go back to that. She has never looked better. That is the best Blair has ever looked.
So you see that person in the first thing that comes to your mind is this is a man, this is how men present themselves?
Well, honestly, yes. By looking at the structure, yes.
What about this is masculine or male presenting?
I'm going to be honest. Anytime I see extra like it looks like a lot of Botox and fillers and stuff like that, I assume that is.
That's what white women are doing, though. White females are doing that.
I tell you, and definitely, if I see lots of Botox, lots of fillers, and then they're tall and hard boobs, I'm assuming that you're a man.
But this is how Christy Norm looks, though. Literally, she looks like Christy Norm.
I don't know who Christy Norm is.
What do you know?
She just got fired as the DHS secretary. She's got fired out of Trump's administration. She looks like she could be her little sister.
That's why I'm saying be careful of who you're also debating and be careful of who's talking about what. Because again, anybody with a phone could debate people. This is why, as much as I do love a call-in show idea and I am thinking about it, it has to be understood that like the most randos will call and give their input, and I'm supposed to take them as seriously as somebody who reads. Yesterday on my commentary video, somebody left a comment, right? And they were like, there's a study about this. And right away, I was Googling studies and trying to read them. And here I was reading this. And I said to myself, is anybody else doing this? I know the autists in my audience are. I know what the autistics are. But like, is anybody else doing this? Because I just sat there and went, oh, really? And then I sat there and I was reading and I was like, look at me researching. Look at me Googling. Look at me doing this extra work that I know this hater's not even going to do, bro. And that's the difference. Is like, for those of us that are really, really interested in knowing, we're going to sit there and be like, oh, shit. And Google, we're going to like literally try to figure it out and not ChatGPT it. Okay. We're going to look it up. Okay. And I think that's the thing that I always have to remember too in this line of work, which is why it is my special interest and why I love doing it, is I actually just love doing it. Okay. I just love reading and, trying to figure out what I'm trying to figure out. Now, this video is a stitch, and this is Queer Poly Babe. That's the pink girl, the right corner. She's doing really good. She's really consistent with her content. Raised by lesbian mothers. Okay. And she's replying to this person in the background.
Woman, why would I want to be with a man that I know likes it up his and likes to suck? That is so emasculating and such a turnoff for me personally. Like, I wouldn't be able to take you seriously as my man. Like, if you're gay, you're gay. I have no issue with you. I don't have no issue if you're bi, but that's my reason why I would never be able to date a bi man.
The funny thing is, this is the same logic that a lot of straight men use to say why they don't want to date women who have high body counts. They say, okay, you sleeping with a bunch of guys is emasculating to me. You having this past before me with other men is emasculating.
I knew a guy, my girlfriend was having trouble being in tune with her body, so I sent her a vibrator I really liked. I was like, this vibrator is really good. He was so upset about it. He was like, I don't want you to have a vibrator because it feels like you're replacing me. Ugh. Do you want this girl to know her body or not? Like, ridiculous what will make a man feel insecure.
Me. And I just personally find it gross and disgusting.
And I do acknowledge that's from patriarchy, okay? I do acknowledge it's a patriarchal insecurity that little boys are plagued with, and they become men who are insecure enough that their girlfriends can't have vibrators, okay? Oh, and can I just say something really fast that I forgot to mention? You know what the distinctive difference here is between West Asian households and the primary groups of people that are talking about this? This conversation about not dating a bi man could never have occurred in a West Asian household, at least a Syrian, that didn't always start with God. Notice that none of these black women are talking about God. You notice none of these like biphobic people are talking about God. That's why I know they're liberals and not conservatives, because none of them are talking about the Bible. They are liberal. They feel like they're liberal. They probably vote Democrat. But then the rhetoric matches with the same talking points that came from that religion, came from conservatism. And that's why I find this conversation so interesting, because I'm like, oh, you're using the same. This is why red pill, you notice that red pill isn't religious. Some of them claim to be religious, but infamously, like Myron from Fresh to Fit, infamously not religious. People always tell him he's religious, but he's like, I'm not religious. Why do you guys keep telling me this? He's not. He doesn't have to be to mimic the religious script. So these liberal Democrat women are mimicking a religious script that they're not even religious in. And so that's why I'm telling you, we're not fighting Republicans. We're talking to liberals who are still upholding and internalizing and embodying conservative values. They just don't know it yet.
And I wouldn't want to date a woman like that. And here's the thing. Are there a lot of men who have that viewpoint? Yes. Do they get on the internet and vocalize that viewpoint? The red pill guys do. But most men don't get online and vocalize that standard if they have it. Or they're at least not vocalizing it in the way that she just did. And I made another video months ago about this woman who didn't want to date bi men. And I used the same analogy about body count. And there were a lot of people in the comments saying that an equal analogy would be a straight man not wanting to date a bi woman. In my opinion, that is not an equal analogy. The reason it's not an equal analogy,
I don't know what she's going to say, but I feel like the reason it's not equal is because men fetishize and romanticize bisexual women. So he's just seeing it as an opportunity to have a threesome later. Okay. What is this? YouTube, welcome to memberships. Happy to have you here.
is because in society, we have decided that sleeping with men makes you lose value. Regardless of who you are, sleeping with men or sleeping with too many men makes you lose value in the eyes of society. Collectively, as a society, we have been conditioned to believe that sleeping with women makes us gain value. Sleeping with men makes us lose value, regardless of who we are.
I don't know if sleeping with women makes you gain value. It depends on your gender. Is she saying that for lesbians or for bisexual people?
So the equivalent would have to be something that would make you as a woman lose value in the eyes of society. So my thing is, people are going to date who they want to date at the end of the day. Do I think that it's rooted in biphobia and homophobia? Yes, I do. However, I feel like this discourse has gone on so long, and I don't really have the energy to engage with it more than I already have, which honestly hasn't been a lot because I've just seen so many videos. But this video just kind of spoke to me specifically because I just think that a lot of the same women who will very openly state their preferences in this sort of way and make the comparison about it being super emasculating when a man sleeps with another man would not like it if a man came on and said that he judges a woman based off of her body count and that he finds it emasculating and disgusting.
No, look, okay, take it somewhere deeper. Does this really reflect your values? Or are you doubling down because you feel like you're being piled on by the internet and you feel like, you know, for them to genuinely feel like people are saying you should date by men means that they have a trigger happening, an activation. It's not wrong for them to have it. The world is constantly telling women who to date. The world is constantly policing women's choices, right? I think the dilemma is that the fun thing about introspection is you become less prejudiced and bigoted. I think the deeper the relationship is with your biological experience, yeah, technically the more open-minded you become. If you unpack your biphobia, you will probably be more open to dating men who happen to be bi, right? That is true. But that's not because we're not saying you should date a bi man. We're saying you are engaging in a reductive way of thinking that is going to cause harm to you and your loved ones. Because remember, bi kids are listening to you. Your children could be bi. And you're using disgust as your indicator of right and wrong, which is why we say like a disgust response does not mean you're right or wrong. It's just an experience you're having. The question is there any data for this disgust response? Okay. Let's see here. Chat says I have a question. There's a pipeline of ideas founded in religious doctrine and cultural philosophy. Do you think that idea of Christianity have blended into Western culture? I'm not sure what you're asking. You said in religious doctrine and cultural philosophy, do you think that the ideas of Christianity? Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase. Let me reread. Hold on. I have a question. There is a pipeline for ideas founded in religious doctrine and cultural philosophy. Do you think that the ideas of Christianity have bled into Western culture? Are you I feel like are you trolling me? All religions here have in some way cleanliness is close to godliness is an Islamic idea, karma. I'm going to assume you're not from America because you're asking a question that's kind of like, to me, asking if the American flag is red, white, and blue. It's like, yeah. So I almost felt like you were trolling me, but you're probably just genuine or maybe not from the US. But yeah, like that's kind of the whole thing. That's kind of the bedrock of like Western philosophy, right? So so yes, I don't know if you just don't know that or you're not from here, maybe. But yes. Okay, next video. Okay, this one.
I really don't care whether a straight woman wants to date a bisexual man or not. I just think it's funny that straight women are acting like they have fucking standards when it comes to dating, when so many of you are dating misogynists and sucking their dicks every night. So I really don't care what you do, but stop acting like you have standards when you let that man who calls women females and talks shit about women nutting your pussy every night, bitch. You don't have standards.
Hey, I don't want to hear one single man in my chat saying this. Listen, I don't want to hear one man in my chat. If I see you, I'll block you. That was for the girls, okay? That was for the girls. Listen, the language is crazy. It's if a man says it, so misogynistic. But what this is like anger and frustration, but it is coming from something deep and guttural that I think is real, right? Which is like, how dare you add to the suicide statistics of gay and queer kids, of the discrimination that our communities are facing because you can't unpack your bullshit, but you're willing to like date these men, right? So like, I absolutely understand the amount of anger and frustration in this because at some point it does feel like, are we so fucking for real right now? But this is why I tell you, most of the world is like this, which is why our communities go underground. What do you think that is, guys? What do you think a queer community is? What do you think a BDSM community is? It's a community of people that meet up and hang out. A community of people that create a safe space from the rest of the world that has been targeting us and killing us. Why do you think we have gay spaces? So we don't have to feel like our spaces are being are a threat to us, so we can feel safe, which is why when gay people talk about straight people being at the bar, it's like, why are you here? Now, I will say, you have to be very careful about who you're observing at the gay bar because what might look like a straight couple might be a queer couple. So be very careful about how your activation plays a role in even discriminating against our own. Okay?
What were my thoughts on the straight woman not wanting to date a bi man conversation? And whenever something is like super open and shut and I have nothing new to say, y'all know I shut my mouth. Like, okay, you don't want to date a bi man, it's homophobic. Like, what else do you want me to say? But obviously I'm making this video because I found something else to say and I found something new to add. One of the creators I follow on here made a video making essentially the base level argument that everyone's making in this case. Like, you can have a preference, but once you deconstruct that preference, what is at the core of it? And for most of y'all, what's at the core is homophobia, right? And so this is my first time looking through one of these comment sections on this discourse because most of the time I don't care what y'all be having to say. Because you're wrong, it's gonna piss me off and I can't change your mind, you know? But I'm looking in this comment section and I see a bunch of women being like, why is my preference so important? There's bigger issues in the world. There's so much more to focus on. There's so many bigger problems than who I want to sleep with. Hey guys, the bigger problem is homophobia. Why are we, like, I almost said, why are we acting stupid? Y'all are actually just dumb. And I know I'm not supposed to say that when people are trying to learn. I know, I'm trying to be better, but this is pissing me off. All of the biphobia that has come out of this argument is adding on to the larger issue of homophobia, specifically biphobia, and how oftentimes biphobia is centered around misogyny. Now that's two bigger fish to fry that you're actively contributing to in this argument. In this discourse, I have seen y'all try to compare dating a bisexual man to dating a gay man, a rapist, a pedophile, a trans woman, and I'm sure there's much more. Not that there's anything wrong with that first or last one, but a bisexual man, they are not. I have seen women say that if they dated a bisexual man, they feel like they would have to get STD panels done more often. Y'all are getting cheated on right now and y'all don't do that. It's simply biphobia. Mind you, I'm pro get tested while you're in a relationship regardless, because I've heard too many horror stories, but saying you would have to do that more often if you were dating a bisexual man is implying what exactly? And then you're pretending that that's not homophobia and that's not part of a larger problem. The bigger fish to fry is the legislation constantly being passed against the LGBTQ community that is killing queer adults and children. Why does my preference matter? There's bigger fish to fry, because it was never just about the preference in the first place.
Exactly.
Like the video that I'm talking about was explaining, it's about what's at the root of that preference. Because like so many other creators have pointed out before me, and that's another thing, like discourse just gets repetitive, which is why I try my best to stay out of the ones where like everybody's already put in their 2 cents, but I digress. People have already pointed out, if a man said, oh, I prefer to not date black women, first of all, that's not a preference, that's you being exclusionary. But they say they refuse to date black women because they're too loud, they're too ghetto, they don't know how to treat a man, they don't know how to act in public, blah, 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 blah. We would all rightfully be like, hey, that is a preference that's rooted in racism. Everything you just said was racist. All of y'all's defenses are homophobic, and we're acting like this is not a preference rooted in homophobia because you're more comfortable with being homophobic than you are with being racist. That's it. You see one of those as a bigger problem than the other, and that's literally it. My preference doesn't matter. There's bigger fish to fry. Well, your preference is rooted in some pretty big fish, hon. This is my...
Okay, now I will say Cat Black made a video about specifically Black women not understanding this argumentation, or it's not going to hit the way we think it's going to hit because Black people mostly date other Black people. So when people make the argument that like, oh, what if a white guy didn't want to date a Black girl? The Black girls are like, okay, and like they're like, and like they don't care because it doesn't make sense. So I thought that was interesting. That's from Cat Black. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like we're using an argumentation that we think, because here's what I think about when I make those argumentations. Conservative Black people. When conservative Black people make the argumentation that I don't date Black women, I'm thinking they're Trumpers. Not that there are other Black people in Black neighborhoods for the Black community, but that they're Trumpers. So I'm kind of thinking of a minority of Black people too, in that sense, where it's like, you know, that person who's like, oh, you know, I just, you know, there's a type. And I'm thinking about those people and I'm like, oh, so like when we use this argumentation and it's a primarily group of Black people who live, you know, in the Black community. So somebody was talking about this too. Like when Black people want to date other Black people, that is different. Like when lesbians want to date lesbians, but the reason it's different is because it's about proximity and safety. But if a Black person who's conservative and says racism is over doesn't want to date Black people, that's racism. But if a Black person who's like racism is real and we need to date people that see us, love us, and identify with us, then that makes sense why they would date other Black people. And I think that's the difference, is who are we talking about? Same thing with gay people. Most of the queer people I know, myself included, we date queer people. Do you know what I mean? Like we do date queer people because that's who we end up getting the most along with. And it makes sense. I'm not saying though that that's the answer. The answer isn't bi for bi, T for T, L for L. That's not the answer. The answer is creating a world where we don't have to date out of survival, but we're dating out of true connection to another person. Because let's be real, the other side of this is that most relationships are still subtle relationships, right? Most relationships are still very much in a settle for the person next to us situation. We don't even get to dream of the ideal person who might defy all of those criterias, you know, but at the same time, I think values end up showing up in a particular way. So even if you are deconstructed and dismantled, it doesn't mean that the person you end up with won't reflect some of those identifying markers, like being queer or being Black or being whatever, right? So I think there's some part of that needs to be talked about. Okay, so here is, okay, now this is a gay bubble issue. And this is about racism and gay bubbles. And I thought this was interesting and relates. Because again, there's this idea that liberal men and liberal women, like they operate the same, but they are different, especially if they're Black and white or different races. But even more than that, I'm going to sneeze, oh my God, is I think like even if you're gay, okay, listen to this man.
I wish I was more open with black man.
Open in what way?
That I want to get in bed with them.
Wait a minute. So
Girl, be so fucking for right now. Then what was even the point of saying that? Is the fact that the man literally says, I wish I was more attracted to black people so I can have sex with them. Be fucking for real. Not so that you can date them, not so that you can be friends with more gays or even gay POCs, but only because you want to size people of color. White gays literally always saying the wrong thing at the wrong fucking time. Like, the fact that a lot of them only see people of color especially. And what's even funnier is that even the black guy was confused. He was like, wait, you mean like so that you can just fetishize them? But like, I really just think it's so insane because like, why is it so impossible for a lot of gays to see other people of color as people, not just sexual objects to obtain? But it's so funny because everyone in the comments was like genuinely thinking he was gonna go somewhere, but then as soon as they realized, oh, he just wants to be more attracted to people of color or black gays so that he can just fetishize them more and be even more racist. I'm like, girl, be fucking for real. White gays try not to be racist challenge. Impossible.
I wish I was.
The idea that he is sitting here and telling himself like, oh, I wish, you know, it's like this is the conversation that's been happening within the discourse about the biphobia. Nobody wants to fuck you. Nobody wants to be fucked by you. We just know that who you fuck and who you qualify as fuckable ends up leading into policy. We just know that who you deem clean impacts policy. We just know like who you think is dateable impacts your children. Some of my homies are having this issue with their liberal parents right now, where the liberal parents are really struggling, recognizing that their kids are maybe not straight or maybe dating people that are different genders or maybe different. It's like, because what you imagine for your life, when you have that like bubble pop, it shatters your relationship with everybody around you. So, you know, when we're having these conversations, we're not trying to get anybody to fuck anybody. We're trying to make you understand that your relationship with fucking absolutely impacts policy. It impacts who you're voting for. So at the very beginning, when we talked about that woman who said, oh, I see conservatives have a point. How many of these women are about to vote Trump? How many of these same women who swore they'd never vote for the orange man or his administration is about to do it just because they feel so activated by TikTok? Talk about not having free will. We are all so limited in our free will that activation from a TikTok conversation about biphobia is going to make you vote conservative. I saw so many of those comments. Who knows whether they were trolls? Okay, let's watch this video. What do you guys think about this one?
As a personal preference, completely unaware. They think their biphobia is a personal preference, completely unaware of the fact that it's actually their programming, that they were trained to feel this way. You see, a hierarchy needs a chain of command. At the top of this hierarchy is capitalism. Ownership of private property and ownership under this system equals power. Just one rung down from that is patriarchy. It exists to uphold capitalism, specifically by controlling who inherits that private property or that wealth. But wealth can't pass cleanly through a bloodline unless you can guarantee whose bloodline that actually is. The patriarchy needed some way pre-DNA testing to get paternal certainty, and paternal certainty needed misogyny. The only way to guarantee whose child is whose is to control the only variable that matters, women's bodies, women's sexuality. But control still needs a culture strong enough to enforce it. Enter religion, puritanical ideology. Now we've marked desire itself as the original sin. Now this is not just about following social rules, now it's about your own eternal salvation. Nobody has to argue about property when the church already made it about your soul. No accident that sexual repression and work ethic came out of the same religious culture. Discipline over desire, delayed gratification, work instead of indulge, control the body. Out of that religious culture came the charm circle, the sex hierarchy, heterosexual, reproductive, married, monogamous, vanilla. Everything else unacceptable, outside, suspect. The hierarchy of sex is a marketplace. Women are the sellers, the gatekeepers of desire and sex and attention. And men become the buyers, required to perform, to chase, to prove, to earn access to that scarce resource. Women must be feminine, soft, gentle, nurturing, kind, and patient. That's the gatekeeper's uniform. Meanwhile, men must be masculine, hardened, stoic, never needy, not at all sensitive. That's his uniform. A woman's value becomes how well she guards the gate and how well she plays the role. And a man's value becomes how well he plays the chase, how well he fulfills his role. But a bisexual man crashes that marketplace. He doesn't validate her currency, which means he removes the one singular form of leverage, of currency, that this system offers her. He doesn't need access to the gate she guards. Not exclusively anyways, not the way the system assumes every man does. That leverage is the only thing the market gave her. But his bisexuality automatically decreases the value of her currency. Women policing by men is a seller protecting her market, protecting the scarcity of the one resource that gives her power. And when men police by men, that's just buyers protecting the value of their own currency and their place in the market. One man not playing by the rules starts to make the rules look optional, the currency less valuable. At the end of the day, they're all protecting the charm circle, which protects misogyny, which protects patriarchy, which upholds capitalism. They think they're by...
It's, so I think Chet says, let's see, let me read chat. Chet says, let's see, Chet says reductive. I disagree. Chet said, let's see, I hear people saying that they will vote conservative because they are Islamophobic and they are scared after Mamdani and Al Said victories and they are supposedly liberal. This is what I'm saying. Where are you really at if when life gets hard, you become bigoted? That's what I always say about, like, how could you be anti-racist that the moment rent goes up, you blame foreigners or black people or brown people or whoever coming into your neighborhood? Like, how for the gays are you if when you think about gay men, you think of HIV? Like, what are we talking about here? In regards to this TikTok, I feel like it's like a really well put together, but not as like helpful to all bubbles, but does exist in one specific bubble, which is what I want to talk about. There is a bubble she is speaking to very clearly, which is one that only looks at romantic relationships as transactional. So people think because we lived under systems of oppression, it means everything is transactional. And I'm saying transactional is a robotic, feelingless, non-connective way to say, I give you this, you give me this. And I'm saying past this very basic, sure, there is also the reality of connection. Like, oh, I want to buy this basket because I think it would look nice in my house and it really says something to me. I'm going to give you money for this work you put into this beautiful basket. Thank you so much. Versus, I have money, you have basket, give me basket, I give you money. It's like the why you bought this basket can be like profound and important and intimate. Same thing with people. You could just be like, you have sex, I want sex, I have sex, you have sex. Or it could be like, hey, I really like you. The connection is great. The chemistry is amazing. I would love to take this in a more intimate direction. The relationship you're having with all these things, you're the only person who can know this, girls. I can't tell you what your relationship is with things. I can guess, but I don't know. You're the only one inside your brain really understanding why you came to this conclusion. Why do you think you're only as good as the body that you are exist in? Why do you only think you can date these kinds of people? Why do you think that this is the answer versus this is the answer? I don't know how you come to your conclusions. There's 8 billion people on this planet. I can't read all of your minds. So when I hear her talk and I see this TikTok and the way that it's put together, sure, there's a lot of it that makes a lot of sense if you're existing within that framework. But for those of us who are queer, we've been outside that framework for a long time, we're looking at everybody else like, oh man, you guys are really trapped there, huh? This is why we say the straight people are really suffering. Okay, but it's not to say that we're better. It's to say that all of our communities are struggling, but at least this isn't my struggle. And your struggle is the struggle if it's the struggle. I was talking to one of my brothers yesterday, and he was saying he's dating right now, and he was arguing with the other 2 brothers. I got a lot of brothers, okay? So one of the brothers were arguing with him, and they were talking about like dating and women are all gold diggers and this. And he was like, that's just crazy to say though. Like, he's like, you're crazy to say women are gold diggers. First of all, what gold do you have to dig? And second of all, who are you even hanging out with? And they're like, women are liars, women are liars. 2 of my brothers are just a mess. And he's like, he's like, if women are liars, what are men? What are fuckboys? And he's sitting here like arguing with them. He's like, look, dating is hard enough, but imagine existing in a world where you think all women are like this. Like, listen, when I talk about men, I am talking about men as a system. But here's the thing. All human beings, and I don't even mean all literally. One of my autistic girlies pointed that out where I said all people are good people. Not literally, but kind of. Like philosophically, all people are good people. But also philosophically, all people are like, okay. So when I say men, I require the audience to meet me halfway and recognize like I couldn't speak for that many people on the planet. What we're saying is a generalization. And we're saying, hey, why does that happen? I don't think it's biological in the sense that I don't think it's inherent, but I do think everything is biological because we're biological creatures. And I'm saying when I say men, I'm saying obviously people who are upholding patriarchy. And then when I say these type of women, straight women, listen to me when I say this. I'm more than happy to always build community with straight women. We have a lot in common. Okay? And if you are biphobic, you can't come to the hangout. You can't hang out with me and my friends. I don't know where I would put you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this goes back to who would I build coalition with on the left? Listen, I will march against fascism with all of you. But if I had an event, I'm not inviting Hassan Piker. He's too misogynistic. Kyle Klinsky and Vosh cannot come. Absolutely not. These men are horrible. They can't show up. They can't come. Okay, what do you want me next to invite David Pakman? They're not invited. Okay? Like, you're doing this thing where you're mistaking, are we marching against fascism? Okay, we're all showing up. Am I inviting you to a sacred space with me and my close friends? You can't come. Okay, am I putting together a community of like, you know what I'm saying? So I think we forget that the internet is like different pockets, and all of our pockets have different clubs. We're not eating the left when we put a line in the sand, but you're not coming. You're not invited. Okay. And the reason you're not invited is because you're not doing the work fast enough and you're a danger to the community. I can't sit there at an event for my queer neurodivergent people and have somebody show up and say bisexual people are promiscuous and they have HIV. Like, you know what I'm saying? This goes back to the gentleman with the Tourette's who ticked the N-word. I can't have somebody who has a disability in which they tick the N-word and don't think to apologize because they've had to do it their whole life. I hear you. You're going to have to do it again. Because the same community that you're ticking the N-word at, they also have issues that they have been given from white supremacy, that they too are tired about hearing it. They don't want to hear another white person call them the N-word, even if it's a tick. So you have to recognize that there is a lot that has to happen for us to actually rely on each other and to build community. And also, I think we have to accept that a lot of the people in our communities, they're not going to do the work. And they're not going to do the work, and that's 99% of the human population, because they're busy. The economy is too hard. It's exhausting. Like, life is so difficult as it is, and asking people to do one more thing. So again, I will never ask you to do more than you're doing. I'm actually going to ask you to do less. I'm going to ask you to meditate and say, what is the one thing I'm doing that's maybe bad or a little bad, and how do I do less bad every day? Because I know you're too tired to do a little bit more, okay? And I would never want you to do that. Because I'm exhausted. We're exhausted. Okay. But we got to do, we have to recognize that all of us are doing bad. All of us have something inside of us that is bad. Okay. Right. Chet said Pac-Man loves Destiny in Israel. I know those Zionists all hang out together. That's what I'm saying. They're predators, Zionists, like they can't come. They can't hang out. You know what I mean? But so many people say Brittany, but Hassan's doing so good. Brittany, Kyle Klinsky, Brittany, Destiny plays a role. Everybody plays a role. Okay. That's how I feel about that. You can't come. You can't hang out. Okay, let's take this conversation in a little bit slight of a direction, but related. I am kind of annoyed watching people talk about Gen Z people and their Puritan attitude. Look at this.
On the topic of the Gen Z panopticon and moral policing, let's talk about the fact that Gen Z political correctness and moral policing is really just conservative Christian ideas repackaged. We know that Gen Z, on average, are turning into prudes, let's be honest. Statistically, even though movies nowadays actually have fewer sex scenes and significantly fewer graphic sex scenes in movies from the last 40 years, Gen Z perceives there to be much more sex in movies.
Okay, pause. How does this relate? So I'm watching this TikTok, and I was thinking to myself, like, oh, this is relating to all of it. So the reason it is so shocking to watch marginalized women be biphobic is because in our brains, we're thinking, like, if they did the work, if they are minorities, if they are marginalized themselves, of course they wouldn't be biphobic. And the same way we kind of thought if you were younger, you would automatically be more liberal or leftist or something. But that's not true. We're all products of our environment. You never know how your kids are going to turn out. You never know how people will be. I will just say, though, I am 37 and I also am sick of seeing sex on the screen. But it's not for the same reason that I think Gen Zers are doing it, but I don't think it's far off. I don't think we are actually examining how much of the sex is coercive, inappropriate, of teenagers on screen. I don't know why we're not talking about that while talking about this. Yes, I want to see more sex on screen that's consensual. That's the proper age group. That makes sense. That isn't about teachers and students. Like, I don't know why none of the conversations are about that. And it's because when we have conversations, whether it's about biphobia or the purity politics of Gen Z, no one's ever really digging deep. No one's asking ourselves, where did this come from? Why does it feel this way for a lot of people?
And is regularly saying we actually need less of it everywhere. Gen Z is having less sex, they're discussing sex less frequently. Most of my Gen Z friends never really feel comfortable talking about sex openly, whereas I notice my millennial friends, for them it's like casual, no big deal, we're adults. There is this idea that discomfort is predatory. And so if somebody talks about sex and it makes you kind of uncomfortable, they are being predatory towards you. If a couple is making out in a public park and it makes somebody uncomfortable, it is predatory. If someone dresses kind of slutty in a place that's in public and, oh my God forbid, another person sees them, that is predatory. And it's funny because when we look,
I wish they would give examples when we talk about this, because same thing with the women talking about biphobia. I get that you guys, and Chelsea Fagan talking about neurodivergency, I am sure you guys are seeing something, but until you give us the example and examine it, you are forming your full understanding of the universe based off of something in your head that we can't see. What Gen Zers? Who are you talking to? Who are your friends? How old are they? Because I'm 37, obviously I don't have Gen Z friends, but like, who are you talking about? You know what I mean? And then what circles are you in? Are you, you know what I'm saying?
Looked at all these left.
Hold on.
Just ideas when it was millennials, you know, back in like 10, 15 years ago, a lot of them were kind of doing the opposite. They were like, no, free the nipple, dress however you want, fuck everyone, whoever you want. Like, that is freedom.
Yes, but it wasn't freedom. We learned over time that it was reductive liberal activism that was important for the moment, but wasn't actually getting us to the other side of it. Where is Bell Hooks when we need her? We learned that, yes, we love partition, please, every day, all day, but Beyonce isn't actually liberating us. We understand that free the nipple and slut walk was such a liberating experience for some of us. It wasn't enough. So yes, I hear you. I love you. You're so young and I love that for you. But it's not enough. We have to go further, better, deeper, harder. We have to do better. So yes, I hear the passion. I love it. I've been naked in public more times than I can count. And yet I will tell you this, it's not the end of the work. It's not the end of the work. The real work is going deeper, is really getting there. Now, I'm not going to say that at the end of it, it's still not being naked in public. I think the end result is still being naked in public. This is kind of an analogy, metaphor. But I think you kind of have to, let me bring up the paint. You kind of got to do this, girlies. This is how it actually works, okay? So you do this, okay? This is how it actually works. Oh, I'm going to explain. This is going to be so good. Wait, let me draw it like this. Okay. First, you have no sex, okay? Okay, you grew up in like that conservative bubble, no sex. And then you go to like a liberal bubble and you're like, all sex, okay? Okay, this is like the liberally bubble. You're like, woo, all sex. And then you go back to actually, how can you have consensual sex under patriarchy if you realize all of it has been coercive and or under duress and or when I've been drunk? So now we're back to no sex, okay? Unless, hold on, informed consent, okay? And then you come back down here where it's, oh, no, sorry. And then you go back to no, hold on. So then you go all sex, and then you go no sex, I'm gonna be celibate. Yeah, celibate. That's what's next, okay? You're gonna be celibate. And then you go to, wait, why am I saying celibacy is the answer when I do want sex? No. I want sex, but I also want informed consent, okay? Because what happens is you are like, sex is evil, and you're like, no, I want sex. You go on you have 10 orgies. You're like, sex is amazing, but why do I feel empty inside? And why are these men all abusive, even in these liberal bubbles? You know what? No sex. Nobody deserves my body. It's sacred. And then you're like, okay, but I really want to be held in the night. So actually sex, but informed consent. Okay. The idea is we go through cycles, but during those cycles, we might wish-wash back and forth. We might say, oh, actually, maybe the conservatives have a point. Maybe we shouldn't be having sex so casually. But it's not that the conservatives had a point, is that the liberals were only one step. And I say liberals, conservative, I mean in the liberatory sense, I mean in the conservative sense, okay? So then you're like, Chad said, wow, read my early 20s like a book. Thanks, didn't know I was that easy to read. Listen, this was my life, okay? I'm sharing my life. Okay, I didn't have sex till I was 22. And then I had a lot of sex. And then I was like, girl, do not touch me ever again. And then I wasn't that I was trying to be celibate, but I was just like, drama. I was like, no, man, I don't need nobody. Okay. And then I came back to it and I was like, actually, wait, I do want to make connections. I value my connections with people. I do want to be intimate with my loved ones who I can have sex with. And how do I find that? And bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom. Okay. So again, it's just a journey we all go on. The dilemma is, and I think this goes back to this framing of the systems at play, the framing of like patriarchy and everything else. If your love life is about surviving the system, then you can't actually have liberatory sex. Then you only have survival sex, which is my husband requires sex 3 times a week instead of we as a team have decided when we have sex. And then you make TikToks bragging on the internet about how often you have sex with your husband and everybody goes, here's your heart, here's your rose. Thanks, Sandra. Okay, wow. Okay, instead of recognizing that every couple gets to decide how frequently they have sex, instead of all of us living up to a standard of patriarchy that says, if you don't have sex with your husband 3 times a week, he'll leave you. And now the woman is coerced into sex to maintain her marriage. What? Okay. How is that liberatory sex? No. Okay, now look at this.
This is
okay. Here we go.
Probably gonna be my last video on the bisexual discourse.
Oop.
Because all integrity and plot has been lost, and now I think it's pushing into the territory where now niggas is just straight up lying. Now all of a sudden, the idea of having introspection into a preference and what prejudices, harmful rhetoric, or systems of hate or systems of discrimination can contribute to that is a foreign concept. So many women are online right now acting as if the idea, the audacity for a bisexual man to even ask or want anybody to have any kind of introspection in what their preference not to date them could be rooted in that may be harmful is taboo and entirely in and of itself coercion. But I find that funny because...
Do you know why? Do you know why they're doing this? Conservatism. Have you ever had this conversation with a conservative? But how do you know being gay is right? Have you thought about it? But how do you know that you're gay? Have you ever slept with a man? But how do you know? Because conservatives use liberatory language as a disguise for oppression. This is why you have to know which category of person you're talking to. Are you talking to somebody who's... That's why these liberal men who came on my channel and were like, it's so good to see a woman finally stand up to the patriarchy, unlike all these other bitches. And I was like, hold on. Wait a second. Blocked. Don't you call women bitches in order to uplift me and my sentiment because you think I'm fighting for you? Absolutely not, sir. I fight for the ladies, the they, them, the he, hims, or deconstructed. So like, no. So I had to be very careful about like, who do I need to block in my chat right now who's finding my video because they want to talk shit on women, you know? And that's what I mean when you got to be very careful about who thinks they agree with you and who's actually saying the same thing, because we might be using the same words and it might sound like we're saying the same thing, but we are not saying the same thing. This is like I'm trying to give like a funny example, but I don't have one off the top of my head really, but it's kind of like I don't know, somebody who's just like, consent is so important. I love consent. I'm like, oh my God, I love consent too. Consent is so important. They're like, ugh, it is just like, you know, and then they sit there and brag about how they get women drunk to have sex with them. So like, okay, it's not that important. It's like, we might both be saying consent is important, but what I mean by it is like informed consent. And what they mean by it is like Barney Stinson consent. Okay. So when we have conversations, you just got to be careful about the words we're using and if we mean the same thing. Kind of like actually when you're part of a niche community and someone's like, oh my God, I'm gay. And you're like, you're gay? I'm gay. And it's like, oh my God, what kind of gay are you? And you're like, I'm a Leo Skeppy gay. Ooh, I'm a Jeffree Star gay. I'm an Ellen DeGeneres gay. Ooh. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we are not the same kind of gay. Thank you. Like, we might all be gay, but we're not the same kind of gay. Okay? So you got to be, okay?
Because if I was to ask straight men right now, any straight man, when it comes to any preference he has, if he's never had pushback about his preference when it comes to a woman's skin tone, body type, age, hair type, whatever the case may be, unless all, if not majority of niggas say no, y'all are blatant fucking hypocrites. And I'm gonna just say it like that. The day that men can have any preference that they want to have, and there are not endless dissertations and think pieces about what men desire online from them.
I would argue that the center of the conversation should not even involve men. Like, the center of this discourse does not require men to be present for the conversation or even involved in the conversation. Because even when we're saying bi men, we're not actually talking about bi men. I hope we all know that bi men are actually not actually being talked about. Because what we're really talking about is your unpacked issue, your biphobia, your homophobia. Like, bi men, men in general, men and women are not opposites of each other, guys. Gay and straight are not opposites of each other. Black and white are not opposites of each other. We're all people experiencing different relationships because of these things, but we are not opposites. We are not opposites. Okay, so when we're talking about introspection and deconstruction, I don't think it requires us to use the argumentation of like, well, men this, men nothing. I don't know a man, never heard a man. I'm blind in my left eye, deaf in the other. I've never even seen a man. I actually don't even know what they look like. Do men even exist? What is a man? Really? Never heard of it, never touched one, don't even know. Okay? That's the best way to have these conversations.
Very same women acting like bi men are audacious for engaging in the same desirability politics. The day that men can have the preferences they have and they don't experience pushback about what they like and don't like, I will believe majority of you women actually care about minding preferences. That is the day I will believe that you women actually find it coercion to engage in desirability politics and what prejudices exist inside of preferences. The day that y'all no longer do it to men will be the day I believe y'all actually stand on that principle and believe that it's wrong. Because y'all are only calling it that because y'all are the ones being asked to do the introspection and y'all think that it's a demand to change, or that the idea of even acknowledging that it is prejudice is meaning that y'all having to forfeit y'all preference. That is the only reason why. because men have never heard the end of it when it comes to their preferences.
I'll give you an example of where these bi women can end up. Biphobic women can end up that would make kind of sense. I don't date typically very high femme women. High femme anybody, actually, any gender. I typically have never dated very high femme. Makeup, nails, high heels, not my preference, not really what I'm into, but I will. But I will, but not my typical, not usually what I gravitate towards. Our lifestyles end up being different. But would I if I fell in love with somebody who fit that criteria regardless of gender? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But I don't think I've ever actually dated somebody who fits into that category. Not to say that I wouldn't, but to say that I don't find myself, because our life looks a little different. If these women said that, because I think a lot of these women are imagining the bi men that are queer versus bi men that are not queer. And I think that they're imagining that the bi men will want to go to Pride or go to the club or go to the dungeon, which I have a video about that to show you in a second. And I think actually, let's just go to it. And I think that is what is throwing everybody off. Hold on, let me find it. It is, hello. Uh-oh. Wait, this was like a perfect video to show you. Do I not have it anymore? Okay, I'm going to show you this video and this video and this video. Hold on, girls. Oh my God, no. Do I not have this video anymore? Oh no, I'm going to cry. Wait, it was such a good video. Oh, maybe I watched it and I didn't save it. Well, the video was basically her saying that she has dated a bisexual guy, and it was very confusing because the bisexual guy was basically someone who was showing her, maybe you've seen it, where he was showing her his grinder and hooking up with guys, and she said she's bisexual. Damn, this is such a good video. And she said that her bisexual experience was a little bit different because she doesn't just find women to take home, and the bi men do, and so bi men act differently. Listen, she's explaining a bubble specifically of a BDSM grinder kind of gay, which is valid, but also different than a heteronormative bisexual man, right? Or a queer bisexual man who doesn't do BDSM, like a vanilla bisexual man, or the different category. That's why I'm saying one bisexual man is one bisexual man. That's all. If you've dated one autistic person, you've dated one autistic person. If you've dated one woman, you've dated one woman. If you dated one man, you've dated one man. You know what I mean? The only difference is how these systems of oppression play into the people you're dating and how much work they've done to deconstruct it, because it will impact the rest of your life, because we are not without impact from the propaganda. And propaganda is a neutral term, right? It just means the information we've been given. Okay? So I'm sad I couldn't find that video, but that's okay. Let me show you this video. Let me actually just check chat too to see if I missed anything. Okay, so Chad said, I wonder how these biphobic women feel about men who aren't bi but have experimented with other men. They probably don't believe in it, because that's a great question. It takes a lot of deconstruction to know that having sex doesn't make you an orientation, right? It takes a lot of work. And I recognize that the communities I find myself in are communities where all people are welcome. Even if you identify as straight and cis, you're never going to be the typical straight and cis, like the conservative majority. You're going to be a very specific kind of straight and cis. And so my community spaces tend to be overall queer because of that. But I know not everybody has access to those kind of community. And guys, I'm talking about a physical, real community, a specific community with words and language and code handkerchiefs and signaling tools. And again, when we talk about community, I think some people don't know there are real communities. When I say the BDSM community, okay, and you go to Kink Fest in Portland, and it is a whole venue that is rented out. One time we were there for Kink Fest, and it was a huge venue rented out, if you know, you know. And next door, there was a plant convention happening, and the plant people accidentally walked into our section, and we were like, hi. But we had, the front of it was centered, it was censored, so they didn't see anything, but we're like, wrong convention. We have conventions with like classes and professionals and educators and doctors. our communities have events. You know what I mean? It's like the furry conventions. You know, furries have a community. There's like a space they go to. They spend thousands of dollars a year going to these conventions, like anime conventions. Just because you watch anime doesn't mean you're part of the anime community. You know what I mean? So I think some people forget that just because you're like gay doesn't mean you're part of the gay community. Like you are in a general reductive sense. Like you are in a, sure, like in the same way, like if you're white, you're part, this sounds weird, the white community, the black community. I don't know if that relates, but you know what I mean. Okay, watch this TikTok.
Optimistic and hopeful. Women who are optimistic and hopeful about men are very stupid. And the reason why I say that is because, first of all, optimism implies that you believe things are going to change. The fact that you haven't clocked on that this is not going to change is extremely worrying. But it's very, very unsettling to accept that men are not going to change. Because if you accept deep down that men are actually never going to change fundamentally, then that means that you're going to have to make adjustments to your perspective and how you move around men and what you actually require of them. Now, I'm already at that stage. I'm at the stage where I've made my peace and I've made my acceptance with men for who they are and what they are. And so I've questioned my own beliefs around my attraction to them. What is that based on then? Because if I know that men are always going to be how they are, if I know that India's pretty much always going to be the most unsafe place for a woman to exist, that's not going to change from feminism. That's not going to change from us writing posts online. That's not going to change. So because I've made my peace with that and I've learned to accept that men are always going to be as they are, then what am I going to be doing to make sure that the men I'm around are benefiting me? What am I going to be doing to make sure that this is worth it for me? Because I could still die being around these men. Women who are...
I don't know exactly the full context of this particular post, so I would want to watch more before I really kind of get it, because I'm not sure if she's talking about like she thinks like men are biologically never going to change or what she exactly believes. But I will say that something that I take from this is when she says like, I've already gone there, I've already understood men won't change. Again, is she talking about men, the gender, the two bubble? Or is she talking about like in the universal sense that like all human beings are what they are? Because it wouldn't just apply to men, right? So then I get a little confused, but then this TikTok exists. Okay, look at this one.
You need to marry for money. But when I say people should marry for money, it's like women's brains don't connect with what I'm saying. They think marry for money means marry the man who you hate, who talks badly to you, who dismisses you, but at least he gives you money. Why is that the only place your mind goes? Why are you so rigidly consumed by the binary of thinking?
Because that's what patriarchy trains women to do. They learned it from patriarchy, because that line of thinking only comes straight directly from patriarchy. Wait, is this Slumflower? Isn't that the person we watched the other day with the pink hair that I was like, oh, I kind of like this person. You guys were like, oh, that's Slumflower. Is that the same person? That name sounds familiar. But like, that's the dilemma, is like the reason their brains hear that is because it's exactly what we were taught under patriarchy.
A man is always automatically going to be evil if he has money, and if you marry for money.
Because that's capitalism. So capitalism is siblings or cousins with patriarchy, and a man who has money, who uses it to dominate you, feels entitled to your body, and so he says, I have money, you have body, you give me body, I give you money. Patriarchy plus capitalism.
That means that there's no love at all. I have never met a man who gives money and buys land and property and puts assets in the name of a woman he absolutely fucking hates. I've never seen that. Have you seen it before? If you've seen it before, please do show it to me. But what I have seen is men marrying women who they hate all the time. Men marry women who they hate because men marry for stability and women marry for love. That's why you need to train yourself out of that stupidity. You need to marry.
Okay, so now watch this TikTok. This is a skit. Hold on. Is TikTok not saving my... I literally save videos to show you guys, and then I realize they're not here when I refresh. And I wonder if it's because let me log back. Oh, that's a great song, but not right now. Thank you. Okay, there it is. Hey, are you still... I had to refresh. Okay, look at this. This is a skit, but look at it.
Dating that same guy?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we've been together for years now, and our relationship is still going strong with no signs of stopping anytime soon.
Oh, good for you. What's your secret?
Oh, he likes me way more than I like him.
I beg your pardon?
That's the secret to making a relationship last. You see, most relationships end because the girl gets insecure or the guy gets bored, but because my boyfriend likes me so much more than I like him, I don't care about him enough to ever get insecure, and the anxiety of knowing that I don't care about him as much as he cares about me makes it so he never gets bored.
Wait, but in a relationship, shouldn't you both like each other the same amount?
No, that never works in the long run, because if you both like each other the same amount, then there's no tension, and you kind of fall into a stale, stagnant, redundant routine. But if the like distribution is unequal between the two parties, it creates a daily relationship momentum that comes from one party always being tempted to leave, and the other party having to find new and exciting ways to keep them in the fold.
Wait, you're seriously saying that's the secret to a long relationship?
Yes, it's my secret. When it comes to me, my boyfriend's passion burns with the intensity of 1,000 suns, but my feelings for him are more like,
Ugh, you've been dating this guy for years and your feelings for him are ugh?
No, not
You're saying the reason you and your boyfriend have had such a successful, long-lasting relationship is just that you don't like each other?
No, we do like each other. If we didn't like each other, we'd just break up. It's just that his level of liking me is significantly higher than my level of liking him. So I like him just enough to not break up with him, and he likes me so much that the constant fear of me breaking up with him is enough for him to really lock in and make sure our relationship works.
Okay, you sound like a fucking sociopath.
Yeah, well, I'd rather be a sociopath than be single.
Hey, are you
Okay, so this is a skit, but I have heard this advice being given seriously in dating circles, and it relates to this conversation here. Because what happens is the dating, regardless if it's about straight, gay, bi, whatever, the dating is survival. The dating isn't honoring the consciousness. It's not being single. It's avoiding poverty. It's saying, I'm still going to be pushed in a direction instead of saying, what do I want? Now, I understand that introspection requires kind of perfect timing. Your ability to introspect and change has to coincide because I don't believe in free will. I think we are sort of at the mercy of our ability to change being somewhat out of our control until it isn't. There is going to come a time in your life when it's going to go click, 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 and you're going to have a window of opportunity to make a different decision. And the question is, what are you going to do? And that includes unlearning the beliefs we've, been taught our whole life, and to not take all of it. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of really good advice my parents gave me over the years that I saved. And I said, thank you for that. I'm going to use that later. Everything else, though, I'm going to throw away. Okay. And so this is a belief that I've seen. My partner and I have even had those conversations, like, which one of us loves the other more? And it's like, the joke is, I obviously love you more, but we obviously love Indiana the best. And that's us acknowledging that this is a conversation that many people have, like, oh, who loves who more and who loves, and I'm just like sitting here saying, like, look, we love each other at a threshold of sameness and in different ways, but ultimately she is our priority, And that's sort of the conversation that needs to be had in a way that also values the consciousness for who they are. But I think most relationships are subtle relationships, and most people are in relationships in which they don't believe in unconditional love versus I do. And I also think unconditional love doesn't mean I stay in this relationship if it's abusive. And so there's like these things at play here.
The fact that some of
if we believe in unconditional love, does that also mean we have to stay in abusive relationships? No. Do we believe that every person we've ever been in love with is unconditional love? Hopefully not, right? Guys, it just uncovers and uncovers. It's like a 17 layered cake. I feel like every single one of us is on a different layer, which is why I say you need to have a deeper relationship with your experience if you want. But imagine like we were eating this like delicious cake and it was like all these layers of cake, right? And this is what I mean about the levels, okay? And there are people who are like here. And that cake is delicious. I mean, it's still fucking cake. You know what I'm saying? Some people are here. Some people are here. Some people are here. Some of us are at the bottom of the cake and we're about to make another one. Okay? And for those of us who are at the bottom of our cake, we're about to eat another one. Okay? We can't even imagine, or we forget how to relate to the people who are here. Because even though we were there at some point, we all start eating the cake at the top. The idea is like, oh my, now, okay, hear me out. Some people might start at the bottom of the cake. Okay, but I promise you, if you do that, you don't have the knowledge, it won't make sense to you. Now you're just going to be confused and your cake doesn't make sense. You have to actually start at the top of the cake. So, because every layer reveals something and builds off the other. Just like the bottom of the cake is the foundation that builds off to make the top layer possible. Okay, So you start at the top eating the cake because you're deconstructing it. Guys, do you know what deconstruction means when you watch a food channel? Same thing with philosophy. If you have a plate of food and you have an omelet, okay, you deconstruct the omelet by taking out the eggs, okay, taking out the butter, okay, taking out the, I don't know, green onion, okay, by taking out the salt, and eventually you'll have a deconstructed omelet. What it means is you'll understand what went into building this omelet. That's what deconstructed means in this context. So you're going to do the same thing. Yeah, oh, I love that deconstructed sandwich. Oh, I love that, Chad. Deconstructed sandwich. That's even better. That's what you're going to do with everything you believe, everything you acknowledge, everything you know about yourself. You're going to constantly make sure, because here's the thing. You are like a half-baked omelet when you come into the world. You didn't get to choose those parts. That's just what we got stuck with, okay? Then on top of that, we start finishing our, let's do sandwich. We come out of our parents, we come into existence as like 2 slices of bread, okay? With like 1 slice of deli meat and 1 slice of cheese, all vegan, of course, okay? And then as we get older, people start putting shit in our sandwich and we're like, I don't know if I want to eat that. And they're like, you're going to eat it. And you're like, okay. And then you like kind of realize over time, you can kind of like slide their contribution out of your sandwich and put your own in there. Maybe you want some pepperoncinis and maybe you want some cayenne and maybe you want some of this. But the dilemma is like it's a give and take relationship. You might get old and you put your own, maybe you put some bullshit in that sandwich and then you eat it and you're like, and then you realize, oh, that was some bullshit I put in my sandwich. I got to take that out. Okay. But maybe the bullshit is kind of sticky and it's hard because if you take out the bullshit, you also just might as well throw away the whole slice of cheese. But you really like that cheese. So now you have to like take out the slice of cheese you fucked up and get a new slice of cheese that has the same importance that the other slice of cheese had, but it's updated. So you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you ruin your own fucking sandwich, but that's okay. Don't throw away the whole sandwich. Just take out the parts that are infected, okay? And replace it and build off of that. That's the idea, okay? Now, when I see a TikTok like this, I assume she's trolling. Look at this.
You from the bi community are trying to convince us women in my comment section that bi men do not like taking it in the booty or giving it in the booty. Bitch, what kind of Delulu world are you living in? They would not be bi if they did not like sleeping with men. There are only 2 ways you can sleep with a man, and that's putting it in the exit and putting it in the mouth. Therefore, they like to have it both ways.
Fun fact, sex could also be fingering, sex could also be rubbing, sex could also be masturbating, sex could also be kissing, sex could be a lot of things. Because at the end of the day, your relationship gets to define what sex is. Okay? You don't get to say sex is only one thing and the intimate bedroom of somebody else, but okay.
They like to have it with a woman and they like to have it with a man. They are sexually pleased by both, which means they crave both. They want both. If they didn't want both, they would be straight or they would be gay. They want both. If I'm not willing to give both, that would cause relationship issues later on.
Okay, so obviously she's frustrating and I think she's a troll, or she's okay, I don't know what's happening there, but that's the problem. It's like, this is not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to her. It's not helpful to us. It's not helpful to anybody. Okay, this is not going to liberate anybody, this way of thinking. It's reductive, it's silly, it's disgusting, it's honestly biphobic, but okay. Queer is not a costume.
I made a video about 2 years ago about keeping queer spaces queer, like queer clubs, queer areas, for queer people only. And I recently saw a video that a trans man made. I forgot his @ I don't have the video, but if you know who it is, like, tag him down below. But like, they made a video about how their couple may look straight and cis on the outside, but it is still a queer couple because he is a trans man.
Oh, okay, this is the TikTok that reminded me of, like, be careful about judging the people you see in the community. This is important.
And his girlfriend is bi. So that is a very queer couple, but from the outside, looking in, it looks straight. And they got heckled at a queer club for being there. And I've seen this happen multiple times in the club. And the thing is, for these people in queer clubs that yell out, if you brought your boyfriend here, get him the fuck out. At the end of the day, you don't know who that person is. You don't know if that's a trans man. You don't know if that's a straight man that's like questioning his sexuality. You just don't know. You don't know. And in an effort to make these spaces feel more inclusive, you're actually pushing our own community out. And yes, do I still agree with the sentiment that we should keep queer spaces queer? Yes, I do. Because I know from personal experience that a lot of straight men and straight girls overrun the gay clubs completely. But queer is not a costume. You might not look queer. The next time you see someone who presents as a straight cis man in a queer or gay club, just keep in mind that they might be still a part of the community, even if they don't look like us.
Agree. And that's ultimately my goal, is to move us in a direction where, yeah, queer spaces are for queer people, but queer doesn't look a particular way. And all people are welcome at the queer club. Look, if I dated a very heterosexual man, I think he would respect the fact that he wasn't coming to the queer club with me. I do. And do I think that that's okay? Yeah, I think there are some spaces that are for the girlies, for the gays, for the theys, and some spaces, like, I don't need to go to all like cis man spaces. If there's like a boy thing happening, I don't need to go to that. But if there's a boy inclusive thing happening, maybe I'll go to that. As like a gender fluid boy, I'll go to that. But I don't want to go to like cis man spaces. You know what I'm saying? Now, let me just focus on this comment. Where is it? La 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 la. Where'd it go? Hold on. I want to just push back a little bit on this. Where is it? Hold on. Where did it go? I'm going to find you. You said biphobic women are treating bi men like conservative misogynistic men treat women. Biphobic men are, I'm sorry, girly, I'm going to go at for just a second. Biphobic women are treating bi men like conservative misogynistic men treat women. I'm sorry, are biphobic women murdering men and then suiciding their whole family? I'm sorry, are biphobic women raping women, engaging in gang violence, and overhauling the United States government to create policy to take away reproductive rights from men? Like, I just want to make sure. I understand what you're saying. Biphobic women are treating bi men like conservative misogynistic men. If only they had the power. You know, if only they had the power, okay? They are not treating. Women cannot treat men the way men treat anybody. Because men as a system have power. They have institutional power. So we have to be very careful when we have these conversations that it might feel like that. It might feel like that makes sense. But if you really look at the danger, that's why these women are so defensive. Because they're like, we could die. And I'm saying they could die, right? These women are being infected by their male partners, men partners, right? Men are infecting their partners with STIs, regardless of sexual orientation. Women are afraid of men. You know what I mean? They're afraid of men. The issue is that they have a real reason to be worried about men, which is why I'm annoyed with all these, like, beat the patriarchy with your own game ladies, that I'm like, don't date men. Only date men that are good men. You only got to find one. If you're polyamorous, 2, okay? 4 at the most. But like, you only got to find one man. And that's about the only man that you're going to need to find. So why are we telling women to even settle for these men who are rich or nice to them or any of these other things? Like, I want to be completely transparent with my partner. Okay, I'll give you an example. I was hanging out with those streamers. You know which ones? The ones that, you know, the big falling out ones. I was hanging out with these streamers, and one of the guys at the table was talking about how he lies to his wife. He was like, oh yeah, when I go out and hang out with the boys and go on vacation, I tell her it's a work trip. I was like, you tell your wife you're on a work trip when you're hanging out with the boys? He was like, yeah. And I was like, that's gross. And he was like, what? I was like, that's gross. He's like, I don't cheat on my wife. I was like, I didn't say that. You don't have to cheat on your wife. You are lying to her though. It's kind of like cheating. And he's like, no, I don't cheat on my wife. I just need a break sometimes. And I was like, you suck. And then I looked at the table and I was like, and they looked at me and they were like, wait, are you going to be like fully transparent with your partner? And I said, yeah, I'm never going to lie to my partner. Why? And they go, Brittany, that's weird. You're weird. I was like, you're weird. You're all fucking weird to sit here at a table, all being grown-ups, and say shit like, oh my God, you're not going to lie to your partner? What are you, 5? No, I'm not going to lie to my partner. Okay? And if you need a relationship where you can lie to your partner, girlie, stay single. You know what I mean? Stay single. You know, you're not in an abusive situation. You're not being coerced. If you're in a normal ass relationship and you're sitting here thinking you default have to lie to your partner, like, why would you do that? Okay. So again, I think a lot of people are surviving. I think a lot of people only have bad examples of relationships. I mean, why wouldn't we? The whole world is built off patriarchy and half our mothers were children when they got married. Okay. So I get it, right? My own family history. You know how much I hate that my grandma was married at 10 years old. 10 years old. 10 years old. 10. You want to talk to me about patriarchy? I'm the first person to tell you, do not date patriarchal men. Don't even talk to them. Okay? But that's not men, that's patriarchal men. Okay, which we reductively say men. Okay, I understand. So again, when we have these conversations, I want you to be liberated and realize like your life is so good. Do not waste it on a man who isn't deconstructed. Don't waste it on a woman who hasn't deconstructed. Okay? Don't waste it on these people who aren't doing the work. Your life is so sacred. It's so important. You are allowed to have a dignified existence. We only get to be alive for so long, and then we're all going to die. I hope you spend your one limited time on earth being a good community member, being good to yourself, and loving the people in your community to the best of your ability. And to meet people where they are, like, I get it. People are fucked. But that doesn't mean that you have to throw yourself at the mercy of these biphobic, racist, horrible, misogynistic people in hopes to liberate them. On the contrary, live by example and say, I don't have to do it, neither do you. I don't have to do it, neither do you. That's what I tell my siblings all the time. Do you see my life? Do you see how good my life is? Because I don't do any of the bullshit you guys are all doing. Stop doing it. Guys, I come from a bubble where like people aren't allowed to touch their own genitals because it's a sin. They can't even masturbate because it's a sin. And then they have the audacity to talk about taking away my reproductive rights or taking away gay marriage. You know what I'm saying? Don't even talk to me about fucking liberation when you can't even touch your own penis without thinking you're going to hell. So to all these people and all of this discourse, and we'll wrap up, to all these people that think they're fighting patriarchy by trying to beat it at its own game, all these people who think they're fighting capitalism by beating it at its own game, like with peace and absolute love, man, the world is truly a reflection of us as a whole. And we are absolutely failing this group project. But good news, we are no different than any people who have ever existed. And yet we are truly the first generation at this time who are having the conversations we are having in the way that we're having them. And I just hope you do not become silent, because that is the next step in fascist takeover, is to silence us. It's for us to get quieter and more afraid. And I understand, and I'm not saying you should put your life on the line, but I fly that flag with pride. I speak my truth with pride because it is something that is so important to me. And I know for a fact kids are watching us. I know for a fact that kids are looking at us and saying, who do I want to be when I'm older? And I hope when they see Brittany, they say, okay, I want to be free, responsible, and realistic about the world that I exist in. I want to be loving and compassionate and kind, not only to other people, but especially to myself. Because I cannot imagine a more unkind thing to do to Brittany than to keep her in an abusive relationship or in a relationship with a man who thinks less of me because of the way that I was born. I could not think of a more unkind thing to do to myself than to put myself in a situation with friends or family who constantly dehumanize me, right? Which is why I have an open but boundaries relationship with my family members, because as much as I love them, I will not be in a room with people who talk badly about who I am, even if they say it's because of their religion. I will get up and walk away and say, I'll see you the next time. I'll see you the next time. I love you. But absolutely not. Not at this stage of my life. Not at 37. Not at 37. Okay? Not at 37. Right? We're all on a journey. If you're doing it at 22, I hear you, but I'm 37, no more. Okay, no more.